I was sitting at the breakfast table, and Brand was across from me, casually flipping through the local newspaper while stirring her tea. Karen was to my right, scrolling through her phone, wearing her usual uninterested expression. The only sounds in the room were the clinking of dishes and the occasional rustle of the newspaper. After 5 years of marriage, our mornings had settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and fragile. Brand had been through a lot before I met her. Her divorce from Marcus was nothing short of a nightmare, chaotic and overwhelming. She had to claw her way out of the mess that followed his arrest for beating her during one of his drunken rages. It left scars, both visible and invisible. She rarely talked about those days, but you could hear the tension in her voice whenever anyone mentioned his name, and it was pretty upsetting. I came into her life a few months after she closed that chapter. We met through mutual friends at a dinner party neither of us really wanted to go to. That night, something just clicked. Maybe it's because her laughter made the room feel lighter, or maybe it was how she really listened when I talked. A year after we met, we got married. Karen, who's 18 now, came as part of the package. I knew being a stepdad wouldn't be easy, especially with a cautious girl like Karen. She was polite enough, but there was this wall between us that I just couldn't seem to break through. I don't blame her entirely. I'm not her dad and never tried to be. I did my best to adjust and find my place in their lives. That would work for all of us. I care about them, I love them, and I've accepted that the Quran will never look at me as anything more than my mom's husband. And you know what? I'm okay with that. For the past few months, Branda has felt like a stranger in our home. The warmth we used to share has been replaced by growing distance. Little things have piled up. Less closeness, fewer conversations, and her constant claims that she's too tired for anything. Plus, she's always on her phone, her eyes glued to the screen as she rushes through everything. Every time I walk into the room, things get cleaned up. It hasn't gone unnoticed. None of this is just in my head. I'm not stupid. These are red flags, bright as day. At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just stressed, or maybe I did something wrong or didn't do something I should have. But when weeks turned into a month, it became impossible to ignore that nagging voice in my gut. So I did what I had to do. I hired a private investigator. Well, I got the answers I needed. A good investigator doesn't come cheap, but knowing the truth is worth every penny. The truth is, she was seeing Marcus, her ex-husband, the same guy who once destroyed her, the one I thought she'd left behind for good. And today is the day when I found out that Branda had something planned for me. Everything started to fall into place. Branda folded a piece of paper and carefully set it on the table, her hands lingering on the edges as if she was searching for the courage to go on. She looked at me, her lips pressed tight, before finally speaking. "Brian, I need to tell you something," she said in an unusually soft voice. I carefully set my coffee cup down, not taking my eyes off her. "Oh, honey, please go on," I said, trying to sound inviting, but she hesitated, fiddling with the edge of the tablecloth. "I won't be around for a month," she said, and her words fell into the silence like a stone into water. I stayed calm, leaning slightly forward. "Okay," I replied simply. Her shoulders tensed up, and she shrugged again, as if bracing herself for something. "I mean, I won't be here for a month." "I'm going to stay with Marcus," she said now. It felt like repeating myself gave her a bit of courage. It's his birthday month, and I want to make him happy. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of her words settle. My expression stayed the same, but I could still feel the heat rising in my chest. I forced myself to stay calm as I replied. So I started, my voice steady but quiet. "What are you going to do there? Clean his house, cook him meals, and sleep with him? Can he even afford to hire a hooker for that?" "I feel good." "Why does my wife have to be that damn prostitute?" I said sharply, sipping my coffee, trying not to let my emotions take over. Her eyes went wide, and she shot back. "What the hell are you talking about? I'm not or a maid. I'm here as his wife." I set my coffee cup down, moving slowly and deliberately, trying to keep my voice steady. But you're married to me. If you did everything you planned with her, it wouldn't be cheating. It would be betrayal of our marriage. She didn't flinch or hesitate. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye. She looked at me and said no, because I told her it was a done deal. I nodded. The absurdity of her logic hit me like a ton of bricks. So, what do you expect from me? Should I just wait here for 30 days while my wife plays house with another guy? Her disappointment was clear, and I could hear the irritation in her voice. Come on, Brian. I've got some needs that I need to take care of, and only Marcus can help me with that. I replied without missing a beat, like I was tying you to the bed and whipping you. You're talking about these needs. I knew everything. I could see what she wanted because I had seen the texts and videos, and those images stuck in my mind, things I could never unsee. I kept my cool on the outside, but inside my anger was boiling just beneath the surface. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "So you have your desires, but what about mine? Can I take care of my own needs?" Her disappointment was palpable when she threw her hands up and said, "Fine, do whatever you want, but the moment I get back, you better be my loyal husband again." I leaned in, my tone cold and calculated, and asked, "What if my desires don't? They'll be satisfied in 30 days. But what happens if I find a better source of satisfaction? Something that makes me not want to come back to you. Would that be okay with you?" Her face twisted in irritation. But before she could respond, I shifted my gaze to Karen, who was silently watching the whole conversation. "What do you think, Karen?" I asked in a calm but sharp tone. "If your mom is willing to risk marrying her new lover for a month, what do you say to that?" She looked at me with a smirk and said, "She has her own needs and desires. She doesn't belong to you, she's not yours, and she can drink from any water source she wants." The arrogance in her tone hit me like a slap in the face. It was clear that Karen wasn't just supporting her mother. She actually enjoyed telling me to go to hell. She wasn't neutral. She wasn't just watching. She was fully involved. I could see it in her eyes and hear it in the way she spoke. She was just as much a part of this as Branda, and I knew the whole truth. Karen would also go to Marcus's house. That thought flipped something deep inside me, but I kept my cool. I raised both. "I'm putting my hands up in surrender because you both want this to happen. I won't be an obstacle in the grand scheme of things." "Brand, your words hurt even more than the way you curved your lips. But I'm not done yet." Calmly and thoughtfully, I continued, "Brand, I want you to sign a document stating that we will be separated for the next 30 days, officially and legally. During this time, I won't be responsible for you or your daughter, not financially or in any other way. I'll be free to do whatever I want and take care of my own needs. Let me know if you need any further assistance." "Sure." The Brand gave me a skeptical look and said, "How does this work?" I leaned back in my chair, keeping my cool and composure. "I'm going to call my lawyer right now. He'll get the paperwork ready, and we can go to court tomorrow to make this official." I paused for a moment, letting the weight of my words settle before adding with a hint of sarcasm. "So you see, I'm just clearing the path here. You can go and be with Tom, Dick, or Gary for the next 30 days, and it won't be cheating since we're breaking up." I let that hang in the air. She gave a slight smirk, tugging at the corner of her mouth, and continued, "Well, I can take care of my own desires, and nothing is holding me back." Her eyes narrowed even more, and a hint of suspicion crossed her face. "Am I missing something? Why are you doing this?" I slowly stood up from my seat, looking at her with a confident expression, because, honestly, your words made it clear you wouldn't back down. "So I don't need to stop you." I gave her a light, calculated smile and said, "I can use this opportunity to fulfill my desires to the fullest." She smiled smugly and said, "Mom, that's a great idea. I had no idea that could support you like this." I turned to her, responding to her arrogance with a calm smile. "You have no idea," I said, and without saying another word, I walked out of the room with my phone in hand. I called my lawyer and said, "Just get it done by tonight." My lawyer was sitting across from Brandy, in our living room, with papers neatly spread out in front of her. She didn't even read the documents. She just grabbed a pen and signed them with a flourish. Her confidence radiated in every gesture. I leaned back, looking at her as she finished up. I couldn't help but let a slight smile creep onto my lips. "It's all done," I said in a steady voice. "It'll be wrapped up by tomorrow." That evening, I told Brandy I was going out for a drink. I didn't feel the need to explain myself or justify it. I just left. I wasn't drunk when I came back a few hours later, but I made sure to return late enough to avoid any interaction with her. The next morning, we found ourselves in the courtroom, and Brandy stood next to me, her demeanor calm and her confidence unwavering. The judge glanced at the document with a neutral expression and said to Mrs. Brenda Wilson, "You checked this with your lawyer?" He looked up from the papers. "For the next 30 days, your husband won't be responsible for supporting you or your daughter, and he can do whatever he wants. Is that okay with you?" Without hesitation, she nodded and replied, "Yes, Your Honor." The judge shrugged and said, "All right." That evening, Brenda was bustling around the bedroom, packing her bags with an energy I hadn't seen in months. Her face practically lit up with happiness, a stark contrast to her usual demeanor. With the contrast that recently filled our home, I stood by the door with my arms crossed, looking at her from a distance. She glanced back at me, her nerves bubbling over. "Oh, thank you, Brian. You have no idea how happy I am. I promise I'll make it up to you when I get back." Her words were almost laughable. I gave a weak smile and replied, "Don't worry about it. I'll make sure I'm okay with it." I turned and walked out, my steps firm, but my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Every detail was set in my head. It's time to put the plan into action. I've always prided myself on being the logical one, the guy who keeps his emotions in check and focuses on rational decisions. But standing there today, I felt a strange pain, a sense of loss creeping in. I lost something, and it wasn't just about the brand. It was something deeper, something harder to pinpoint. But honestly, it had already been tearing our marriage apart long before this moment. All my efforts to help her daughter, every bit of time, energy, and money I poured into trying to make things easier for them. My life was wasted on that new car I bought for her daughter, the huge college fund I worked overtime to build. All of it meant nothing. And her daughter had the nerve to tell me I don't know her mother at all. Well, that sucks. But when has life ever promised to be a walk in the park? Newton's third law says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and that's a fundamental truth of the universe that still holds true. Now, I'm determined to prove that with my reaction that night, Brenda. She left with our daughter to be with her ex-husband, Marcus, and I waved goodbye to them one last time. They deserved to have that farewell. Once they were out of sight, I headed to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels from the cabinet, poured myself a generous drink, added a few ice cubes, and took a small sip, letting the warmth of the alcohol slide down my throat. It was the only thing that felt familiar at that moment. Then I picked up my phone and called. "It's done," I said firmly. "Let's start the show tomorrow morning." I woke up with a clear plan. The first thing I did was walk away from the car I bought for my wife's daughter. It was a Honda, and she really liked it when she first saw it, even though she grumbled about the color, saying it wasn't her favorite. That didn't matter anymore. Now she could pick any color she wanted for her next car, and I hope her dad, Marcus, can get her that color. Then I noticed my wife's car, the one she adored. She always showed it off and acted like it was the best thing ever. It was like the best thing I could ever do for her. It's such a shame she never appreciated the guy who worked tirelessly to give her what she wanted. Now, for the next 30 days, Marcus can take care of her transportation. I won't be the one providing that comfort anymore. As for the house, it was way too big for them. I heard them complain about it for years. They always talked about wanting something smaller and cozier, like Marcus's place. Well, now they're living in one of those, so maybe it's time to make this a permanent thing. It doesn't seem like they'll be coming back to it anytime soon. By the end of the day, I had what I needed in my offshore account, $2 million. No more sacrifices. Now I could finally do what I wanted. And nothing and no one was holding me back. 3 days went by, and the silence was almost peaceful. But then the phone rang again. It was her. Her voice was shaky like she was trying to hold it together, but you could still hear the panic. I called home, but no one picked up. "Where are you?" I couldn't help but ask. I smiled. The irony didn't escape me. I took a sip of my drink, savoring it slowly. "Without missing a beat," I replied, keeping my own desires in mind, and wrapped up the conversation, cutting her off before she could respond. That evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. First it was Brenda, then Karen, both calling me repeatedly. It was clear they were furious, probably livid. I had a pretty good idea why. They must have gotten the notification from the bank about the joint account. The college fund was wiped out. I could almost hear the shock in their voices and understood why they were so upset. I wasn't sure what got into me, but honestly, how could I focus on my own desires when all my money was tied up in those accounts? I didn't pick up the phone right away. The calls kept coming, but I just ignored them. Let them cool off a bit. Let them deal with the mess I left behind. 3 more days went by. 3 long days of constant ringing before I finally decided to answer. "Hey, Brand, what's up?" I said in a calm, almost casual tone. "Sorry, I was busy chasing my dreams, so I couldn't pick up." She didn't hold back during our calls. There were insults, accusations, guilt trips. Everything just poured out like an unfiltered rant. It was a mix of nonsense and some stuff that honestly made me raise my eyebrows in disbelief. But to be fair, she had every right to be mad. I wasn't expecting sympathy. I just sat there and listened, waiting for her to finish. And as soon as she finally stopped talking, I realized it was time to go. I thought it wasn't the right moment to say anything, so I hung up before she could get a word in. This went on for 5 days, 5 straight days of it. I was hanging up on her every time she called, and each call was crazier than the last. At that point, it was almost predictable. But on the 6th day, when I picked up the phone, there was a noticeable shift. She wasn't yelling anymore. She didn't unleash her anger on me. Instead, there was a calmness in her voice. She asked, "Why did you take all the money?" I leaned back, not rushing to answer. "Well, staying at a 5-star hotel in Jamaica doesn't come cheap. How was I supposed to pay for it if I didn't? I paid for what was supposed to be my dream vacation." "How could you do this to me?" she said. I was furious. I wanted you to stay loyal to me. But that didn't work out, so I ended up with the next best thing, a vacation in Jamaica with a young Russian blonde who kept me company. The voice of the Brand trembled with rage when she shouted, "You're not getting away with this! As soon as I get back, I'll make you pay." I could feel her anger through the phone, like it was burning right through the line. Honestly, it didn't bother me. I expected it. She's always been like that, way too sensitive about things, same old drama. But this was different. I really wasn't in the mood to deal with any emotions right now. I didn't want to fight with her or anyone else. I took a deep breath and gripped my phone tightly. "I think you're angry," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. These weren't the feelings I wanted to deal with at the moment. Before she could say anything else, I hung up. I didn't need to hear her threats, at least not today. It had been almost a month, and now it was time to move on to the next stage of my plan. I got on the plane, feeling clear about what I needed to do. I had this idea of a destination, and it wasn't just another vacation. No, it was something more, Thailand. When I was working as a software analyst, I often got offers to collaborate with a company in Bangkok. Back then, I brushed them off because I didn't feel like I needed anything more. But now, with nothing tying me down at home and nothing that really mattered left, I thought, why not? So I accepted their offer. And now here I am on my way. The flight was long, but it gave me time to think about everything that had led me here. When the wheels finally touched down, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. I'd made my choice and was ready to move on. I landed in Bangkok, turned on my phone, and immediately called my lawyer. She's coming back today. Please give her my gift. It's time for everything to come to light. Later that evening, Brand and Karen got home, or as they used to call it, home. I could only imagine the look on their faces when they saw what was waiting for them at the door. A man was already standing there, waiting for them, approaching with a professional demeanor. "Hey there," Mrs. Brand asked Wilson, nodding. Her face showed a mix of confusion and fear. A man handed her an envelope made of manila paper, stepped back a few feet, and took a photo before leaving without saying a word. The moment captured in that brief flash was still the best thing I'd seen in a while. There was Brand, holding the envelope, her face scrunched up as tears started to fall. And Karen was standing next to her, looking completely stunned. Her eyes were scanning the driveway. "Dude, where?" "My car," she asked in a trembling voice. Just as I predicted, the phone started ringing. I let it ring, waiting until I was comfortable in my hotel room before dialing her number. I didn't even have to say anything. She picked up almost immediately. Before I could say a word, she exploded. "You're not a noble man. You're jealous of Marcus. You can't handle your own ego." Her voice was a piercing, non-stop barrage of insults, the same ones every cheating wife throws around when she's. I didn't interrupt her, I didn't even flinch, I just listened. This time, I didn't hang up. I didn't run away from it. I was waiting for my turn. "You opened the envelope and asked me in a flat voice." There was a brief silence on the other end, and then I heard the rustle of paper. Inside were pictures of her and Marcus having sex, with timestamps and locations, even the ones where she was tied to the bed. "You knew all this time," she said, her voice trembling for the first time. "Yeah," I said calmly, I did. I could almost hear her processing that, realizing the weight of the truth. "Since you made your bed," I continued, "I made sure you'd sleep in it." "You didn't try to stop me," she said. "Why would I stop you if you chose to cheat? You broke our marriage. Besides, why should I choose between your infidelity and a vacation in Jamaica?" The next part was pretty straightforward. The divorce was finalized on the grounds of adultery, and I left a bit of money in our joint account. I hope that's enough for you to get to Marcus's place. I could feel the tension on the other end of the line. She was angry, but I didn't care. The ball was no longer in her court. Her voice shot through the phone, sharp and desperate. "You didn't leave any money for your daughter. How is she supposed to go to college?" I didn't hesitate. "She won't go. Not with my money. She's not my daughter." Her actions had proven time and again that she could get into college on her dad's dime. After a long pause, I heard someone take my phone away. Then Karen's voice came through, and I was hit with another barrage of screams and insults. I knew what this was. I knew it was going to be our last conversation. The last time I heard anything from both of them, I had to hold myself together. Then, with a voice shaking between anger and disbelief, Karan said, "You sold my car." "No, I sold the car," I shot back. Not even flinching, she exclaimed. "You took my college money." Her voice was full of clear desperation. I couldn't hold back anymore. "No, I didn't," I replied coldly. "I made sure I had enough money to cover my desire to take a vacation in Jamaica. Besides, it was my money and I took it back. I added seconds, just like you said. Your mom can drink from any water source, and so can I." She started yelling again, her voice shaking with anger and disappointment. "What am I supposed to tell my friends? My car is gone." I didn't even flinch. "Just tell them what a loser you are for selling it to pay for your vacation in Jamaica. And now I'm stuck talking to my biological dad, the winner, on the other end of the line." She took a sharp breath before yanking the phone back. Her voice was full of accusation. "You stole our money. I'm calling the cops." "Please." "Keep going," I said in a completely calm tone. "You signed a legal document that released me from any financial responsibility to you. I spent the money within 30 days and now I'm broke. For me to believe that—" I smiled. "I never asked you to believe me, but I'll prove it in court." I wrapped up the conversation with a calm, closing statement. For any further communication, please call my lawyer. His number is in the envelope. Have a nice day. A few days later, I knew Brand would try to contest the divorce, but I was confident that my lawyer handled it, saying that I knew about her staying with her ex-husband and that I approved of it. Then my lawyer presented a time-stamped image showing that this was before the agreed 30-day period. My lawyer said, "Your Honor, the fact that Ms. Wilson was already sleeping with Jean Parker before those 30 days were up is a fraud, because Mr. Wilson didn't know about her cheating. So, the claim that my client knew about and approved of her affair with her ex-husband is false. She lied to her husband and betrayed him. Trust. Plus, my lawyer quickly proved that I spent every last cent on a vacation in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Receipts, bills, all that jazz, it was all legit. On top of that, Ms. Wilson backed out of her financial obligations during the 30 days she spent with her ex-husband. But the judge wasn't naive. He could smell the manipulation and deceit from a mile away. Still, there wasn't much he could do. The paperwork was all in order, and the legal process was followed, so his hands were tied by the formalities of the law. Even if he could see through the thinly veiled nonsense, he ordered that the remaining assets be properly settled. It was right then that the lawyer, clearly desperate, tried to bring up the issue of child support. But my lawyer wasn't going to let that slide. He immediately shot back, pointing out the obvious fact. Karen wasn't my daughter, either biologically or legally. I never adopted her, and I knew that was a crucial detail that made child support irrelevant. However, my lawyer didn't stop there. He took a bold step. To add to the absurdity of the whole situation, he claimed that I'd rejected all my worldly responsibilities to become a Buddhist monk. No income, no possessions, no obligations. It was a bold defense, but it worked. The judge, who had been sitting with a stone face for most of the hearing, couldn't help but laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. He looked over at the Brand, and his grin gave away how amused he was. "Tough luck, lady," he said, barely holding back his laughter. His words echoed through the courtroom, perfectly capturing the craziness of everything that was happening. I can't help with that. The divorce is finalized, and the money from the joint account needs to be transferred to Brandy a month after the divorce. I found out that Brandy and Karen moved in with Marcus, but the reality was far from what they probably imagined. It wasn't the happy family they were hoping for. In fact, it was just a repeat of the toxic and abusive cycle. Brandy had been trying to escape for a long time. Marcus, when he was drunk, continued to hit Brandy, just like he did during their marriage. But I think Brandy kind of liked it rough, and so did Karen. She was nothing more than a silent witness, powerless in the face of all this. She couldn't leave. She had nowhere to go. There was no support system left for her. She was stuck, trapped in the same nightmare. Just like me, Karen now walks to school or takes the bus. No luxury, no easy rides. The comfort they used to enjoy is gone. As for Marcus, my revenge on him was never cruel. It was simple. I just gave him what he wanted, and now he has to feed and take care of her. To his new family, his wife and her daughter, let him deal with the consequences of his actions. Let him face the reality of the mess he created. I gave him exactly what he wanted, but it came with a price. Sometimes you need to be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. Dear listeners, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.